Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone who is joining our session today. Welcome to the booth session at the essay workshop event. My name is Alina, and I'll be your host today. It's a pleasure to introduce Bill Kuzer. In this session, we'll walk through the MBA essay for booth step by step, offering you practical insights on how to prepare a strong essay. There will be time for live Q&A, so please submit your questions using the Q&A tab and feel free to upvote the ones you're most interested in. So let's get started. Bill?
Great. Thank you very much, Alina, and welcome everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Let me see if we get the presentation up. Great. So we are going to spend a little time talking about the booth essays. As many of you may know, there is a new essay this year. So although I will have a sample and walk through a sample on essay number 1, we don't have any actual successful examples for essay 2 yet, but we'll talk through some of the issues there and how you might approach it. So this will be a chance for you to kind of get an overview. I'll spend a little bit of time talking broadly about the essay process and with particular reference to booth essays, and then we'll dive into a particular booth essay that will give you some concrete view of what I mean by some of the general comments I'll make. So let's jump in. So what are some of the key things that we need to think about for a booth essay? Why do they matter? Well, first off, you need to think about how is the basic career goal question is. Let me back up a minute here. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. Why do booth essays matter? So they go beyond the scores and grades. Scores and grades are something you cannot do anything about, but the booth essay is your chance to really tell your story and convey to the admissions committee what makes you different and exciting and a candidate that they really ought to have in their school. It gives you a chance to show that you have an understanding of yourself. What are some of the key attributes you have? Demonstrates your ability to reflect and do a bit of introspection on your life, your career goals, and how an MBA is going to help you with that. It gives you a chance to talk about how you're going to participate in the booth community, the things that you will bring to that community, and how you will be an active member of the booth alumni base. And it gives you the chance to show that you really understand booth. And for booth in particular, understanding its ethos, its aura, its culture is very, very important. And finally, it shows that you are indeed ready for an MBA and that you're prepared and willing to make the commitment and go through the challenges of earning an MBA from a place like Booth. So the first question is really a career goals question, and this is very similar to many of the first questions that many schools offer. So the question is, how will the Booth MBA help you achieve your immediate and long-term MBA career goal? There is no minimum number of words. And there's no maximum number of words. They do like to have at least 250 going in, but that's kind of squishy. So this is a classic why an MBA and why Booth question, which means it is really all about your career goals, and being clear on your career goals is critically important. What is it that you want to do, and how is an MBA going to help you? And more important about that career goal, why is that important, and what impact are you going to have? So being able to convey to the admissions committee that here's what I'd like to do, here's why this is important to me and to the world, and what the impact you want to have. Incredibly important part of this essay. You want to be concise, you want to be clear in your writing. That's true of any essay you're going to write. We suggest that you aim for 500 or 600 words, no more than that. So this makes this essay potentially a bit longer than you'll find for some other schools who have a limit of maybe 300 words or maybe hard stop at 500 words. And of course, you want to have a clear vision and connection to Booth's offerings. The fact that there is no word max, again, you don't want to be 1,000 words on this. They'll kind of, one, they may not read the whole thing. And two, it just kind of demonstrates that you haven't really figured out how to say what you want to say in a concise, focused way. So how do you do this? So as I said earlier, the career goals are the critical part of this essay. So you want to start with those career goals, talk about what you want to do immediately after Booth and in the longer term. Be as specific as you can. So a particular type of organization, a particular role in that organization. And again, the most important part of this is, why do you want to do that? What is it that you find interesting about that role? What kind of impact do you want to have in that role? And I think it's, I often suggest to clients to think about, what problem do you want to solve, or what impact do you want to have? And you might outline that problem in the opening of your essay. So telling a little story about an issue that you see in the world that you would like to have a hand in working on. So it might be addressing issues in healthcare. It might be addressing issues in technology, and kind of demonstrating what that challenge is. And then going from there into, and therefore I would like to be, leading an organization that works on these issues. And Booth is going to help me get there. So the second piece here is, you want to show self-awareness. So you want to connect what you've done in the past to what you do in the future. So what experiences, what skills, what knowledge do you have already? What are some of the ways that you've put that into practice in your career to date? And how will those then lead you to moving on through the MBA and into the career that you have in mind for the future? And then again, kind of tied impact. As I said earlier, impact is incredibly important. And then finally, how does all this fit with Booth? What is that you're going to get out of Booth? How will Booth help you achieve this goal? What are you going to bring back to the Booth campus when you are there? So in order to prepare this essay, what do you need to do? One, do your homework. If possible, visit the campus. Certainly attend the events, certainly the online events, just to get a feel for the school, get a feel for how they talk about themselves, get a sense of whether this is the right place for you and how you can make that fit work for you. As I said earlier, Booth is very, very interested in making sure that you understand its philosophy of education, the key elements of its program, and how those are going to help you achieve your career goals. We also suggest that wherever possible, you develop relationships with current students or recent alumni to get a sense of their experiences at the school. And these are things that you can, again, add into the essay. But again, the bottom line here is that you want to get a good sense of what the school has to offer and how that fits with your own particular learning style and your own particular career goals. We want to talk about why those elements matter to you and how are they going to lead to your success in your career. And again, analytical rigor, flexible curriculum, student life, those are all critical elements of the Booth program. The other thing they talk quite a bit about is the Chicago approach, which is the Booth's philosophy of education, which consists of the analytics, data analysis, a broad foundation in a set of specific disciplines. So understanding the Chicago approach is another element of conveying to Booth that you do really want to go there and that you have a good feel for it. All right, I'm going to flip over and actually walk through a particular essay here for a second. All right, so here is a particular essay from a couple of years ago that was successful. So this essay starts off with a little story. And as I said earlier, opening an essay with a way to, you want to bring the reader in. You want to have a hook that causes the reader to say, oh, I want to read more of this. I want to see where this is going to go. I want to learn a little bit more about this issue. So in this particular case, it's a candidate who had worked and is talking about fast food industry. And he opens up with lots of people have worked in the fast food industry. In fact, that 1 in 8 Americans have worked at a McDonald's at some point in their lives. So opening with a story, a quote, a statistic that kind of has the reader perk up a little bit and say, oh, I'd like to learn more. This is an interesting opening. you really want to hook them in. But it's obviously it's got to be aligned with what it is that you want to do. So this particular essay starts with a little story about the fact that so many people work in fast food, and then goes on to say that the candidate had worked for a company that had developed some automation techniques that would allow these fast food industries to reduce their employment. And that concerned him. And so he realized, he talks a little bit more about, all right, this is concerning. I'm helping this company, but it's also putting people out of work. And this is a challenge for him. Kind of wrestling with, what does this mean for him personally? What does this mean for the economy generally? And what does it mean for the labor force in the United States? So he then goes into talking about, where does he want to go with this? So here's a problem. We have the potential of really reducing our need for labor in a variety of ways. What do we do with those people? How do we train them? How do we provide them new sets of skills? And that's something that this particular candidate wanted to do. So his goal is to lead an organization that will help develop programs and opportunities for people that have been displaced by automation and other technologies. So talks about that kind of, talks about the overarching career goal is to leverage software to upskill people. So that's the overall goal and why it's important. He then goes into a little bit of the immediate goal is, you're not going to go immediately starting this company. So what do I do in the interim? I'd like to, after I get my MBA, move on to a company that does work in this area, that does help develop new skills, that does help upskill the labor force. And that's what he wants to do immediately after school. And then going from there, he will start his own firm at some point. So then he talks a bit about, what does he bring to the table? So he's already got skills in strategy, product management, organizational management. But he needs more things to be successful, both in the short term and in the long term. And specifically, he needs some skills in entrepreneurship. He then goes in to talk about, what does Chicago bring? So I've got this story, I've got this problem. Here's what I want to do to help solve that problem. I already have some skills that make some sense that could help me in this goal, but I don't have enough skills. I need some other things that a Chicago Booth education can provide me. So what are some of those things about Booth that are going to help me get to my goal? He talks about the Chicago approach, analytic framework, help him understand those disciplines, understanding businesses. And then he talks specifically about certain courses. So mentions a couple of faculty members, particular courses that he thinks, and again, he aligns them with particular aspects of his career that he is looking to do. So it's not simply, oh, I like this course, I like this faculty member, here are other people, I've found their names on the website, but rather talking about how will they help you do things within your career goal better. So he talks about 2 or 3 faculty members of areas that he thinks he needs to develop, which has been very successful, and then continues to go on with some other programs and products. So talks about, because he's got some interest in entrepreneurship, he talks about the Polsky Center, which is the entrepreneurship center at Chicago Booth and at the university. Again, the key here is connecting these ideas, these courses, these faculty members to specific aspects of the career or specific elements that you need to develop as you're developing your career. And then finally goes into talking about the final EdTech investor and how he wants to develop that. And finally, he wraps up with a little bit of a summary talking about how, with the Booth education, given his career goals, he hopes to be able to help build these organizations, help invest in companies that will address some of these challenges of a workforce that is under pressure from technology and continued cost cutting. So again, opens with a story, gets to the goal, talks about his current skill set and what he needs, then goes in at length to what Booth is going to provide, and then eventually just summarizes with all of that, I can then achieve my career goal. So that's, again, a broad overview of one particular sample, but I think it gives a pretty good idea of a structure that you might consider. Again, you want to get a hook in the front, You want to talk quite a bit about the why of your career goal. You want to talk a lot about what Chicago Booth is going to do. And then you wrap it all up at the end to kind of say, with the Chicago Booth, I'm going to be successful. So that's essay 1. So let's move on to essay 2 a little bit. Right? Essay 2. So this one is brand new for this year. So we don't have, as I said earlier, don't have a lot of experience with this one yet. Not a lot of examples. No one has actually written them and had them submitted quite yet. So prompt is basically the Chicago Booth appreciates the individual perspectives and looking for different viewpoints. So basically the idea is here are 4 photos. Pick one of them and tell us what it means to you. And you can interpret these photos in a lot of different ways. But why are they doing this? It's a very unusual, first time Booth has ever done this. There are other schools that have used pictures in a variety of ways, but Booth has never done this. So it's a creative way to ask what's important to you and what resonates with you and whether or not you have really understood the Booth culture. And it gives you a chance to really focus on a personal story and authenticity. So again, you see these pictures here, 4 of them. Again, you can interpret them in lots of ways. So let's think about what those might be. So choosing your photo. There isn't any right photo. This is not a trick question that they're only going to admit people that pick photo number 3 and talk about it. It's literally which of these pieces resonate with you and which ones kind of speak to you. So ideally, you want to talk about how you interpret that picture and then perhaps tell a little story about why it's important to you. So sharing an anecdote shows off your values. So if you think about those 4 pictures over to the right here on the screen, one of them is kind of team spirit. There is a group of students actually at a Chicago Bulls basketball game is what that picture is. So that could be about team spirit, could be about community, could be about excitement, any number of things you might interpret that question. Second question is kind of more about, it's in a classroom setting, someone raising the hand. It might be about intellectual curiosity. Dialogue might be the classroom culture and environment at Booth that resonates with you. The third one is group of people, could be inclusion. It could be a group of building good friendships. Again, how you interpret these questions is largely up to you. And the fourth question or fourth picture is really about entrepreneurship. It's an awarding of a check to a winner of a new venture challenge. So that could be about entrepreneurship and technology, innovation, any number of things. Again, you might interpret there. So there is no right answer for what these pictures represent, but it's more about how do you interpret them. And obviously, there's some broad areas of expectation for those pictures. As you're preparing your essay for this round 2, or the second sample, is you want to talk about your personal values. So if you're going to talk about community and team spirit, how do you reflect those particular values? If you're talking about the intellectual rigor of the school, how do you reflect that in your own life and in your career and in your education to date? So talking about what you bring to the table and why those elements are important to you is an incredibly important part of this essay. And again, because this is going to be as much a storytelling exercise as anything else, and more so than kind of here's what I want to do, here's how Booth is going to help me. You want to be, concise but authentic, and you want to be compelling in what you talk about. So this really is an exercise in telling a story, and not simply just kind of, I think this picture says this, and I like that because. So tell the story. Give us some example from your own background of what you've done and how it's important to you. All right. Third essay is the optional essay, which most schools have. Booth's prompt is pretty straightforward. Is there any unclear information in your application that needs further explanation? And in general, we would recommend that you attack or take on this essay in a couple of particular circumstances. One is if there have been significant challenges in your undergraduate background. So if you didn't do well one semester or grades suffered over the course of the first couple of years, what have you. So being able to explain that and what happened is important, and demonstrating how that might have changed or how you've overcome or learned from those experiences. A second thing might be a major life change for you over the course of your career. So having a child that caused challenges, having a medical issue that caused challenges, or third, if there were significant gaps in your resume. So you took off a year to travel the world or to deal with a family emergency. Being able to explain that so that there aren't questions that come up as the reader is looking through your application. So if they're seeing a resume that has a hole in it, or they're seeing grades that perhaps aren't up to the standard of a Chicago Booth, being able to explain that. The other way, because this prompt is so open-ended, there might be other elements of your background that you want to explain as well. These could be family circumstance, they could be a particular involvement you have with a volunteer organization, something that isn't easily put into any of the other essays or into the resume or into your letters of recommendation. So if there's something else that's critically important to you that isn't easily talked about in another part of the application, here's an opportunity to put it in. But the caution here is this is not supposed to be an opportunity for you to just to expand from that 500 words or so on your first essay to make it another 300 words. It is something truly that is different, that isn't easily handled someplace else. So, as we say, use only if you need it. Be factual, brief, forward-looking. It is not simply another essay. And, if there are opportunities to show growth or resilience, so you overcame a bad freshman year in college, great. Here's how did you do that? What did you learn from that experience? If you had a significant medical challenge, what did you learn from that experience, and how have you moved forward? Those are the key elements of this particular essay. So, final key takeaways here. You want to be as specific as possible about where you want to go in your career and what values drive you. So here's the problem you want to solve, here's the impact you want to have, and here's why that's important to you. You want to demonstrate a deep understanding of Booth and its culture. You want to be able to show that you understand what they value, that you value it as well, and that the courses, faculty members, special programs, opportunities, nature of the curriculum are all things that resonate with you, that are important to you for specific reasons. How are they going to help you achieve your career goals? You want to use that essay, in this storytelling format to kind of weave together your past, what you've done, your future, where you want to go, and how Booth links those two. So I often will say your structure, think about your essay, particularly essay 1. Career goals, where is it that I want to go? What are the things I want to address? What are the problems I want to solve? Where have I come from? And how then Booth is going to link where I've come from to where I want to go. That's basically the arc of your storyline. Edit, revise. Working with someone to help you through that process is always a good idea, just to kind of get a different perspective and to perhaps identify other areas that you might want to include or talk about. And finally, authenticity. You're not trying to figure out what does the admissions committee want to hear, but rather what is it that is important to me and how do I convey to them who I am, what I value, what's important to me, and what I want to do with my life. So this is really your chance to tell the admissions committee a little bit more about you And you do that throughout the application, in the essays, in your resume, in your letters of recommendation, but it's an opportunity for them to get to know you and what's important to you. So keep that in mind as you're preparing any of your applications for any school, really. All right. So some mistakes, missteps. As I said, don't write what you think the school wants to hear. You want to be authentic. You want to be conveying who you are, not simply trying to second guess the admissions committee. No vague or generic responses. Be as specific as you can to you. What is the role you want to play? What is the career goal you have? Why do you want this particular course or this particular faculty member? What is it about Booth, in this case, that really appeals to you? Be specific. It's too often easy to just kind of pull pieces out of the website. I do recommend that you spend time looking and understanding the website and the particular things that make Booth unique, but you don't want to just kind of cut and paste those and plop them into your essays. They will recognize that. They know the website as well as anyone, and so they will see that language and say, oh, this person just kind of did a little bit of a cut and paste. Name dropping is an interesting issue and challenge. It is important that you spend time talking with alums and students, if you can, about their experience at the school. And if you've done that, mention that. But you don't want to have a long list of faculty members you've talked to or students that you've talked to. 2 or 3 is fine, just to give an idea that, yes, indeed, you have done that research, you have explored the school, you have spent the time to talk to others about their experience. It's not the numbers of people you've talked to is not the key. It's what have you learned from those conversations. Your essays should be different from your resume. They should elaborate on the resume. They should provide more context for your resume and go into a little bit more depth and specificity. In these days of ChatGPT and other AI tools, easy to use those to try to craft an entire essay. We would recommend that you not do that. You can use AI to perhaps give you some ideas, or maybe help grammar check. But again, we want you to be authentic. You're trying to get your voice across, not simply a generic essay that pretty much anybody could write. And always answer the actual question. One of the challenges is, as you're applying to multiple schools, you'll try to shoehorn somebody's essay response into another school's format or into another school's prompt. Most admissions officers can tell when you've done that. So make sure that you are addressing the prompt that is asked, and make sure that you tailor the essays to the school, not simply try to take one school's essay and use it with a minor tweak or two for another school. Fortunately, a lot of schools have a very similar first essay about career goals, so there will be a lot of elements that you can use from school to school, but be very careful about doing that and make sure that you are answering the prompt appropriately. Just a little bit about us. Fortuna Admissions has been in business for about 10 years. Lots of our coaches come from most of the top schools. You have an opportunity to get a free consultation if you're interested as well. Basically have somebody take a look at your resume and talk through what you might think about in terms of thinking about the next steps for your school journey. And I think we now have a chance for Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Alina, I think, is going to run back through some of the possible questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill, for this insightful presentation. And let's go to our Q&A. Let's start with the first question. How much is name drop of students and courses important?
So I think it is important to indicate that you have spoken with others and that you have explored the curriculum and know particular courses or faculty members that are relevant to your career goal. That being said, it's 2 or 3 of those, no more. It's not, don't give me 15 courses that you want to take. That takes up too much room in your essay, doesn't allow you to really talk about why you want to do certain things. But certainly understanding that a particular course. So for example, if you're interested ultimately in entrepreneurship, knowing about the Polsky Center, is going to be an important element of that. If you are interested in doing something kind of nonprofit or in the social realm, the social impact courses at Booth will be an important element of that. But again, keep that limited to 2, 3 courses or faculty members and students that you have talked to.
Thank you. Will the recommendations be similar for the MSF application essays? And what would be some of the differences?
Oh, that's a great question. I have not worked with MSF students yet, but yes, the basic ideas will be the same in terms of how you want to convey your story to that admissions committee. So basically everything that I said in the general sense will be applicable to the MSF program as well. And there may be, again, I have not seen their specific questions, so I don't know what the questions and the prompts are and how those might differ a little bit, but generally you still want to talk about where do you want to go, how's the school going to help you, and why is that important to you?
Thank you. Is it a bad idea to have a plan A or plan B for short-term goals?
I prefer that you talk about your plan A. I mean, clearly you want to have a plan B. I mean, remember that what you're putting into this essay is your career goal as you're thinking about it now for the purposes of applying to business school. By the time you get to school, you will learn so much more. You will interact with so many different people that have different experiences that your career goal may change completely once you're in school. But for the purposes of this, for the application for this essay, you want to be specific about one thing that you want to do and be able to focus on why it's important. And again, you want to make sure that that's a reasonable thing to do. So it's not as though, yeah, I'm going to come to get my MBA at Booth and I want to be president of General Motors when I come out of Booth. Well, that's not likely. So let's talk about something that is realistic. That ultimately maybe you want to get to that kind of a role, but what's the process to get you there? But I'd stick with a plan A.
Thank you. For the second essay, is there something as to tangential interpretation?
Say that again. I didn't.
Tangential or tangential? Sorry for my pronunciation.
Tangential. And I'm still not sure I fully understand the question, but yeah, you can interpret those photos just about any way you want. So I kind of gave you some broad ideas of how we might interpret them, how I might interpret them, but you might see them in a very different light, and that's fine. Just explain how you're interpreting the picture and then why that's important. So there is no right way to interpret the picture as much as there's no right way to talk about the picture once you've interpreted it. So you have a lot of freedom there. Show some creativity.
Thanks. Any specific recommendations for dual degree candidates, MBA, MPP?
Other than kind of how do you link those 2 degrees together? So why do you want to do them both? What are the 2 degrees going to help you do? And your career goal presumably would benefit from someone having both of those degrees. So the basic ideas that I walked through pertain here as well, but you'll want to be a little more specific about having both an MBA and an MPP will enable me to do this and why that's important. But other than that, everything else is the same. Clear career goal, the impact you want to have, the problem you want to solve, and how Booth or Harris or whatever is going to help you get there.
Thanks. Will the photos for essay 2 be the same, or will it differ from each year?
That's a great question. We don't know. Again, this is the first time they've done it. It could be next year they go back to the old question and not have the photos at all. It somewhat depends on what kind of response they get and how much the readers of the applications like these answers. So we don't know. My guess is that no, I don't even have a good guess. Could be anything. So too early to tell.
Yeah. Thanks. How does the AdCom evaluate the authenticity of the essay?
They'll get a sense just from how you write, what you talk about, if you're writing from the heart, if you are not using generics, but are being specific, they can get a sense of, are you being authentic? Are you really interested in this? If you're talking about a challenge that you want to address, why is that important to you? So talking about specific experiences in your life that have led you to this. So it may be that you've had a family member who has suffered from an illness, and therefore you would like to work in developing technologies to address that illness. It may be that you've had an experience, as I showed in the example of working in a place where you're cutting heads, and that has concerned you, and therefore you want to work in a place where you can deal with that. So bringing some of your own personal experiences and your personal value set into the essays will show that authenticity.
Thank you. If you don't get an LOR from current manager, does it have a negative impact on the application? Reason could be that workplace is not supportive of higher education and can impact career progress at work.
Right. So the ideal for any business school application is to have your immediate supervisor write your letter of recommendation. However, the schools recognize that there are reasons why that might not be possible. So that's okay. Most schools also have somewhere in their application a little text box to explain why you did not choose your current supervisor as your recommender. And so, you need to craft that response well. But if you've done that and you explain why your current supervisor isn't the appropriate person to write a letter, the schools understand that, and it should not hurt your chances, assuming the other recommender that you have chosen is a good one and writes a good letter for you.
Thanks. How much does tone matter in these essays? And would you recommend a more casual or professional one?
That's, I wouldn't necessarily recommend one or the other. So much depends on your individual writing style. Some people are very good at writing in a casual, breezy style that communicates exactly what they want. Others are much more comfortable writing in a more structured, professional style. And there's no right answer. I have seen both kinds of writing do well and be accepted into schools. It's really somewhat kind of comes down to how you want to present your ideas and what are you comfortable writing? What style are you comfortable writing with? I wish there was a kind of a cut and dried, but I've had some folks that just can't quite get the casual, humorous, isn't this fun kind of writing, and others who maybe have spent a lot of time doing creative writing or have written screenplays or plays in the past that do that very well. Others are kind of more structured. So again, sorry, I can't give you a hard and fast answer, but it really depends on your own writing style and comfort level. Both can be successful if both are done well.
Thank you. Is this a disadvantage if you don't do the optional essay?
No, definitely not. In fact, most candidates probably don't use the optional essay. Again, as I said earlier, most of the time you're going to use that to explain poor grades, perhaps a GMAT score that isn't what you want it to be, or a gap in your resume. If those things don't pertain to you, if you've done well, if you had a great score, if you haven't, no gaps, and there isn't anything else really unusual in your background, don't use the optional essay. It is there to explain things, not necessarily to add new information, is how you should look at that.
Thank you. What are the main values of Booth?
That's a great question. I would spend some time on their website and talking to people to get others' perspectives. But having graduated from Booth many, many years ago and having worked there for many, many years, the main values are deep belief in analytics and data. So not opinion, not shooting from the hip, actually being able to back up your assertions and your ideas with data. Very important. Respectful dialogue. So pushing back on ideas, certainly, but with respect. So if you may disagree with someone, again, bringing your own arguments to the table, but doing that with respect and with data, also critically important. And innovation and trying new things, always being creative. One of the great things about, I always thought about Booth was it had this tremendous structure of how the program is put together, but within that structure, you had great flexibility to create, to innovate, to come up with new ideas. And that's something that the faculty value very, very highly there, as you probably have read or will have read if you go to their website. Booth has more Nobel Prize winners on its faculty than I think most other business schools combined. And so that kind of leads to this idea of new ideas, constant innovation, constant rethinking how we approach the world. So those are some of the key things that make Booth proud of itself. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. What should be the overlap of stories in my CV, LOR, essay? Should I build over things that I have mentioned on CV using LOR and essay, or use essay to highlight other things not mentioned on CV?
Okay. So the three elements all have to, let's say, coordinate. You don't want to exactly duplicate all three. So let's start with the CV. The CV will kind of, in a very focused way, talk about some of the things that you have accomplished, some of the positions you've had, the things that are of interest to you. Your essays could very well elaborate on some of those points, but will be more oriented toward where you want to go in the future. So if you think about your CV, it's kind of, here's what I've done up to now. The essay, and particularly the first essay, will be more, here's what I want to do in the future. And refer to some of the things you've done up to now, but mostly focused on the future. Your letters of recommendation should elaborate more, again, on what you've done in the past. So you might talk about you helped save the company X millions of dollars by doing some wonderful project. Your recommender probably should talk a little bit about that and elaborate on how you did it, why you did it, how important it was to the organization, that sort of thing. But you don't want your recommenders to kind of go through point by point on your CV and explain each one of them. You want them to write their own versions of what they think is important and how you have done well at the firm. We at Fortuna have a whole little process that we kind of have candidates go through to help them communicate with their recommenders to make sure that they are hitting all the high points and making sure that they're demonstrating in their letters your initiative, your analytic ability, your systems thinking, your strategic thinking, those kinds of things. But all of those should be, some of the things they'll talk about will also be on your resume. So those three elements, essay, resume, CV, and your recommendations should intertwine a little bit, but should never duplicate one another.
Thank you. Bill, we have time for maybe two more questions,
Okay.
and then we'll have to end the session. So let's go with the next question. Would discussing the Chicago approach in a picture prompt essay strengthen my application? For example, I could choose a picture where people have their hands raised and expand on this topic. Or would it be better to take a different approach to avoid repetition?
It depends how you've talked about it in the first essay, if you've talked about it there. I would probably definitely don't want to duplicate something that you've talked about in the first essay and the second essay. Give people a broad view of who you are and what's important to you. If you haven't talked about it, I mean, talking about the Chicago approach in the second picture essay would be fine, as long as you can talk about it in a way that's authentic. So making sure that you understand what it is and be able to talk about why it's important to you, why you like it, and how maybe it would be different than if you went to some other school. But again, talking about it there is fine. Just don't duplicate. Give the admissions committee as much information about you as you possibly can.
Thank you. What happens if I use AI to translate a Spanish essay to English?
Great question. That might be a very useful tool if you've started it in Spanish, having to translate it, but then certainly get someone else to review it and proof it and make sure that it is communicating what you want it to communicate. I've not used AI for any translation work yet, so I haven't seen how well it does. My guess is it probably does a pretty good job. But I would definitely have someone look at that essay after it's been translated.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Unfortunately, we are out of our time for questions, and thanks for joining the session at our event. And a big thank you to Bill for the valuable insights and guidance. We hope this session helps you feel more confident as you prepare for your essay. Best of luck, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Thanks, everyone, and thanks, Bill.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a great day, everyone.